Now, we all make mistakes whenever we're learning other languages, and to be perfectly honest, I think many of us make mistakes even in our native languages as well. But when you are learning a language, and many of you out there, you are here because you are learning English, I think it's important to, well, once you're able to identify your mistakes, try to actively fix them and correct them so that you are no longer making this mistake in the future. And that's what today's lesson is all about. It is about finding and identifying your mistakes. So, before we get to this, I just wanted to reinforce that this is a great practice lesson, because what we're going to do is I am going to walk you through the process about how to identify your mistakes and then just work on practicing and practicing and practicing so that you can avoid those mistakes in the future. And when you're able to do that, it's just going to help you improve your overall English fluency. So this is very important, but it's also something that I think is overlooked. And what I mean by that is I think many of us want to correct our mistakes, but we're not really sure how to do it. And even if we know how to do it, I think sometimes it's difficult to actually set time apart in order to do this, identify your mistakes, and then practice correcting them. I think most of the time, for many people, get caught up in learning a language that's all about let's learn something new, new vocabulary, new grammar, and when it comes to correcting your mistakes, we're talking about correcting things that you have already learned, that you already know. So I want you to keep that in mind, because it is a process, like I said, and I'm going to walk you through the process the same way I would with my students in the past when we're in the classroom, because right now we are this is our online classroom. So if you are in the chat, again, I want you to participate, try to practice your skills, answer the questions, and even if you are watching this later, I would encourage you to engage and answer these questions, because that's what interactive English is all about. So let's do a little warm-up, all right? You've heard my long introduction to this. Let's go ahead and start with a warm-up of, just see if you can identify the mistake. So I've taken some tweets, all right? And on Twitter, you will find a plethora of grammar mistakes that people will make. So this one is from Donald Trump, of course. Can you spot the mistake? I want you to write it in the chat, write it in the comments section if you're watching this later, and then I will show you the answer. So he said, wow, every poll said I won the debate last night. Great honor, all right? What do you think? What is the mistake? Now, I hope that you can, just read this quickly, and again, something really stands out. And right away, it should just be that spelling mistake, okay? Honor. If something is an honor, it means that, well, you are proud of something that happened. It is spelled Honor. Great honor, all right? The next one, are you ready? So this is from somebody named Jennifer. I have no idea who this is, but she said, hate when people try to sugarcoat it. Okay, again, there is I think, again, a glaring mistake that if you read this and you'd see it, oh, okay, this is clearly the mistake. What do you think is the mistake? Hate when people try to sugarcoat it. All right, you may be able to hear the correction by just listening to what I said, but in this case, in this tweet, she's just using the wrong word in order to convey the meaning that she wants to, all right? So I hope you said, yes, hate when people try to sugarcoat it, all right? Sugarcoat. And if you don't know what it means to sugarcoat, this is a good way to build your vocabulary. It's when you try to make something usually sound better than it really is. So really think about what it means that if you are coating something with sugar, you're putting sugar on something, usually because people might think, well, this tastes better. All right. You can get addicted to sugar. It tastes better. So when you say this and you're talking about what somebody is saying when they're talking, and if they sugarcoat something, if they sugarcoat an explanation, then it means that they're trying to make it sound better than it really is, to sugarcoat something. Often, if you don't want to hear bad news, somebody may sugarcoat it for you and they make it sound like, well, it's not so bad after all. All right. So that's what it means to sugarcoat something. It means when you are talking, it's talking about what people are saying. All right. It's about spoken English. The next one, and this one has several different mistakes. All right. So, says, I want to visit the Eiffel Tower in France one day. That's what it says. I read it like that, but it should be, I want to visit the Eiffel Tower in France one day. But there are, several big mistakes just right off the bat. If you're looking at this, I hope that you can read this quickly and know that, yes, okay, France, it's the name of a country. It is a proper noun. It should be capitalized. Eiffel is misspelled. So you could say, I want to visit the Eiffel Tower in France one day. So Eiffel Tower, again, that is a proper noun. It should be capitalized. And again, when you're talking about writing, I know he wrote wanna as the reduction, like most people would speak it, W-A-N-N-A. On Twitter, and if you're just writing an SMS text message, okay, whatever, I would not encourage you to write actual reductions like that. Always spell them out, especially if it's more formal writing for school or work. Just keep that in mind. So the reason why, again, we're doing this, just a quick little warm up to see if you can spot the mistake. Now, one thing I want to mention is we're talking about many of the mistakes that involve grammar. I know that many of you are thinking, well, I really want to improve my spoken English and identify my mistakes in spoken English. And that can be a little challenging, but what I would recommend, I want to tell you my recommendation, because both writing and speaking are productive language skills. You are producing the language in order for, well, in writing, for somebody else to read, and speaking for somebody to listen to you. So in that sense, if the things that you can write, many of the times those are also things that you can say. That's not always true, but there are similarities in that regard. So what I would say, even if you want to correct your spoken English, I think the best way to practice that, all right, is with writing. All right, so because the reason I say that is for this. So steps to identifying your mistakes. The first one, like I said, is just to write more. So whether you want to identify your mistakes in writing or even speaking, I think writing is the way to go. And the reason I say that is because it is reflective. And what I mean by that is when you write, okay, you are writing something down on paper, you can look at it and then actually take some time to think about it. Think about, okay, is this what I want to say? Is what I'm saying correct? Am I making any mistakes? And oftentimes, if you find some mistakes in writing, if you are using the wrong word, or maybe it could be a mistake with a preposition, often you may be making the same mistake when you're speaking. So if you are able to correct these mistakes in writing, I think that will help reinforce correct speaking whenever you want to have a conversation. So the first thing I would say, especially if you are trying to do this on your own, is to start writing. Take a little time and write about a topic, and this would be an activity that you are really trying to identify your mistakes. So the first thing you need to do is write something. You can be writing in a journal, you could write in a diary, you could just write something. It could be an email that you have written, or even, a comment that you would write to me on this YouTube channel. That is practicing your writing. And the next thing you need to do is always reread. And this is something, again, I think is overlooked. People tend to write something and then they don't reread it and actually try to look for mistakes and correct their mistakes. I always try to make this a personal habit of mine, whatever it is that I'm writing. If it's an email, even if I'm responding to one of your comments, I always try to reread it, make sure that there are no mistakes, and then I will post it. And then the last suggestion that I have for you, because I said this is a process, that you are going to write something, you're going to reread it, and you are going to look for one mistake at a time. Now, when most people reread, if I write something, I'm going to reread it. I usually just look at the whole thing all together and see if any mistakes pop to my mind. Now, if you are actually trying to identify one of your mistakes that you are making because you are an English learner, I think a great way to do that is to go one step at a time and look for one mistake at a time. And that's what we're going to practice right now. We're going to practice. I'm going to give you a writing. I want you to look at it, and we're going to go through it and correct one mistake at a time so that you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So the first thing I want you to do, I want you to, well, hold on, wait, there's one more. Nope, there's the paragraph. Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to read this paragraph. All I want you to do is read it, okay? And just see if you understand it. It's not very difficult. I'm only going to give you about maybe 15 seconds to read the article, all right? Are you ready? So all I want you to do is read it right now. Here we go. I'll give you 15 seconds. Ready? Begin, okay? Okay, so I hope by now you have read this paragraph. All right, now I'm going to go back over here. So you read the paragraph? Great. You understand it? Perfect. What I want you to do right now, you're in the chat. How many mistakes did you see? How many mistakes did you see in that paragraph? I want you to let me know. Write that in the chat. Write the number. And again, even if you're not sure exactly how many mistakes there were, take a guess. How many do you think that you read? Because I'm sure that when you read that, you came across some definite mistakes. How many do you think you found? Write that in the chat. I see some different ones. Lolly says 5, Mary 7, English Vibes 4. Okay, so 4, 5. Okay, we're around there, 4 or 5. Now Samuel found 8. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back through that same paragraph together. We're going to correct it, and we're going to do one thing at a time. So I told you this is what I would do in a classroom with a group of students. And this is what we would do. I'd say, okay, this is what we're going to look for. The first thing we're going to look for is just punctuation, all right? I don't want you looking for any other mistake. Even if you find it, that's fine. You can see the mistake. I don't want you to think about that one just yet. All I want you to look for is just punctuation. The next one that we're going to look for is just spelling and capitalization. And then we're going to go through it again and look for subject-verb agreement and verb tense. And then we're going to look for articles and then prepositions, the last one. Now, you can make a long list of different things. This is just a list that I put together for practicing this reading right now. So now that you have this list, all right, you know that we're basically going to reread that paragraph 5 times, looking for each one of those and trying to correct it. And again, the more you reread something, the more likely you are to find some mistakes. So if you're just joining us, I know some people come in here and there. We are working on correcting your mistakes. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go through it one at a time and look for these different things. Now notice that these two first things right here, number 1 and number 2, punctuation, spelling, and capitalization, that is strictly about writing. Because when you're doing that, you're talking about, your writing skills. Because when you're speaking, it doesn't apply. Because people may say some word wrong. For example, I showed you that Trump tweet. That is, he just misspelled it. You would probably say it correctly, even though you're misspelling it. So 1 and 2 are strictly for writing. 3, 4, and 5, that would also apply to speaking as well. That is good for both writing and speaking, finding those. So let's go through this. Here we go. The first one that I want to do is this. All right, so now let's read it. All I want you to do is look for punctuation. And if you don't know what I mean when I say punctuation, I'm talking about periods, full stops, question marks, commas. Should there be a comma anywhere? Apostrophes. Just the punctuation that you would need to use for correct writing. Okay, so look for the writing. What do you guys see? How many mistakes that you can find? If you find a mistake, I want you to write it in the chat. And this one is a little. I think this one's a little more challenging. All right, punctuation. All right, look for those periods, those apostrophes, those commas. Do you see any problems? All right, now let me show you. So there are 2 punctuation mistakes, and maybe these are a little more difficult, and I've underlined both of them. So the first one is talking about a bird's eye view. This is an idiom, which means that you have an overview of some area, kind of like the view that a bird would have, and you'd say, wow, it was a bird's eye view. So birds is possessive, all right? Which means you need an apostrophe there. Birds, B-I-R-D apostrophe S. The next one right here is just this whole sentence. After eating a quick snack, I begun walking back down. This is an example where after eating a quick snack, this is a dependent clause. It is an adverb phrase. So when you have a dependent clause that comes before an independent clause, I begun walking back down, you need a comma to separate the two. So after eating a quick snack, comma, I begun walking back down. So those are 2 mistakes just for punctuation. 2 right there, all right? Now what we're going to do, let's read it again. Now this time I want you, I've left those corrections in there, so all of the corrections are left in red. I want you to look just for spelling and capitalization. Do you see any spelling mistakes, or are there any capitalization mistakes as well? Are there any proper nouns that should have a capital letter? Or perhaps maybe there's a capital letter that is not that should not be capitalized, all right? So do you see any spelling or capitalization mistakes? That's what I want you to look for right now, all right? And then again, just look through it quickly, see if you find anything, and then I'm going to identify it for you. All right, yes, Yusuf, perfect. English vibes, excellent. Okay, so Golsa, yes. So those are the 3. The people that I just mentioned, they found those mistakes. All right, the first one. Yesterday I went for a hike in Diamondback Mountain. All right, it is the name of a place. This is a proper noun. You should have a capital M. Diamondback Mountain. Cloudy. It was a cloudy day. C-L-O-U-D-Y. Before I had it spelled with a W. Cloudy. And the last one, afternoon. I don't know if you noticed, but I snuck a U in there before, but it should be A-F-T-E-R-N-O-O-N, afternoon. So those, that is two spelling mistakes and 1 capitalization mistake right there, because Diamondback Mountain is a proper noun. So those are 3 more mistakes. So right now we're at 5 total. Now I want you to go through and look for subject, verb, or verb tense. So when I say subject verb, I mean, does the subject, does it agree with the verb? A plural subject should have a plural verb. A singular subject should have a singular verb. And verb tense, what I mean by that is, well, verb tense tells us when something happens. Is it the past, is it the present, or is it the future? So make sure that the verb tense is correct. Should we have the past tense? Should we have the present tense? So can you find any mistakes with subject, verb, agreement, or verb tense? What do you think? All right. Yes. Excellent. Sleepwalker. Very nice. So I think when you're looking through this, you probably notice there are a few different mistakes. So let's go through this. So the very first word is yesterday. So yesterday is a time word that tells us, okay, everything happened in the past, all right? So all of these verbs, this should be talking about the past. So instead of I walk for hours, I walked for hours. It should be in the past. That one sentence where we have the comma after eating a quick snack, I began walking instead of begun. Begun is the past participle. I began walking back down. And then that last sentence, that is subject-verb agreement. I would not say it were. That is a mistake. It was. It was a nice way to spend the afternoon. 3 more mistakes, okay? So now that we've looked for subject-verb and verb tense, now I want you to look at the articles. Articles, I'm talking about a, an, and the. You can also have the omission of an article. And when I say omission, maybe it means that you do not need to use an article. So those are possible mistakes there. A, and, the, or no article. All right. Do you see any mistakes when it comes to articles? Can you find any? There definitely are some, because if there weren't, I would not show it to you. So now we're going back through it and looking just for mistakes with articles. Yes, I think many of you see the when talking about top. Perfect. So there are actually 2 mistakes. All right, it's right here. Yesterday I went for a hike in Diamondback Mountain. Now, when it comes to articles, there are rules that you can follow. For example, if you're talking about the name of a bridge, you're going to use the Golden Gate Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge. When we're talking about mountains, no article. All right, so before the name of a mountain, that is when there is no article, so you do not need to say the. So if you're talking about, I really want to climb Mount Everest, I'm not using an article before Mount Everest. What's another thinking of a famous mountain? Going just for highest mountains. One day I want to hike up Mount Kilimanjaro. Again, we're talking about the name of a mountain. There is no article. And then I think many of you spotted that other one. I walked for hours before reaching the top. We're talking about a specific location, specific point before reaching the top. 2 more mistakes. All right, the last one that we're going to do. I want you to look for prepositions. Do you see any prepositions that are incorrect? What do you think? Write those in the chat and let me know if you find those mistakes. This is all about trying to identify different mistakes. What do you think? Write those in the chat. So if you haven't found any, I'll show you. There are 2 mistakes when it comes to this right here. And we have this. Okay. So yesterday I went for a hike. You wouldn't go for a hike in a mountain. You would hike up a mountain, or you could hike down it. But because later on I talk about going back down, which means at the beginning of our story, then I should say I went for a hike up Diamondback Mountain. And then the next mistake was it was a cloudy day, so I didn't get much of a bird's eye view. Much of a bird's eye view. This is a great phrase if somebody says, I didn't get much of something. I didn't get much of a view. I didn't get much of an explanation from somebody about something. So you didn't get much of something. So those are 2 mistakes with prepositions, and now we have our corrected paragraph, which if you add them up in total, there are 12 mistakes. So what we did is we just corrected this paragraph. We talked about all 12 mistakes, and we went through this one at a time. This is how I would recommend that you try to identify any mistakes that you're making. And the reason why I think you can do this is writing, again, I said it's reflective, that you're able to look at it and try to think about, okay, is this right or is this wrong? And if you're not sure about it, that is when you can use the internet and try to look up and find the right answer and then go back and correct it. Now, what I would typically do with students when I would go through, I would try to help them identify where the mistakes were made, and then they would have to write down what kind of mistake it was. Is it a spelling mistake? Is it a punctuation mistake? An article mistake? And then I would have them count up how many mistakes they made with prepositions, How many mistakes did they make with subject verb? And over the course of time, when you start counting how many mistakes you made, then that allows you to see where your biggest problem is. Because if you are writing and you are actually keeping track of how many mistakes you're making and what type of mistakes you're making, you may see that, oh my goodness, I am making so many mistakes when it comes to articles. And that way, now you know what you need to focus on, what you need to study in order to improve your skills. So this is what I would recommend to try to identify your mistakes. Use writing, reread, and try to look for one mistake at a time. Now, if you're just looking and thinking, well, I just want to really try to practice and how can I improve my grammar? I think reading is a great way to do that, because when you're reading, it's something you're doing just for your own enjoyment, but you are actually seeing how the correct grammar is used. Even if you're not studying it, you are seeing how the correct articles are being used correctly. You're seeing how words are being spelled correctly. And even if you're not thinking about it at the time, that information is still going up here. So reading is a great way to improve your grammar skills. If you guys, before I have a few more corrections that I want to go through with you. But if you guys enjoy what we do, again, you can check us out on Patreon. We are active there. It's just another way to connect with us. We have some cool rewards. You can check that out. I'll throw a link in the chat. There's also a link down below right there. And check us out on Patreon and just connect with us if you guys want to support what we do here at Interactive English. So now I have one more last section of corrections that I want to make. And these are corrections that, this is writing that I've gotten from all of you. So what I've done is I've gone through some comments where people have asked me and they said, hey, is this correct? Can you correct this for me? And I've identified some of those, and now I want to correct them with you. So these are a little more challenging. So can you find the mistake? The first one, I'll read it. It says, if you don't respect grammar rules, you'll miserably fail. What do you think is the mistake? What can you identify that mistake? I'll give you a few moments and then I'll tell you what the mistake is, because again, there are all sorts of mistakes that people can make when it comes to correcting your writing and improving your English skills. So what do you think? If you don't respect grammar rules, you'll miserably fail. All right? What I would say, there are different ways that you could go about and try to correct this sentence. But what I would say is that the word order is incorrect, because miserably is an adverb, and adverbs can be confusing because you can use them all throughout the sentence. But when you're talking about this expression, like you want to say that, you would say you'll fail miserably. This is commonly how this phrase would be used. And this, I would also say, is a collocation, because these are two common words that are found together. If you don't respect grammar rules, you'll fail miserably. Excellent. I think many of you got that one. Perfect. The next one. So somebody asked me, they said, good morning, sir. Can you correct me? Thank you. This is the sentence. I captured on the video how they were fighting. How would you correct this sentence? If you're reading it now, what would you say? What is the mistake? How would you correct this sentence? Again, and this is this can be a little confusing, I'm sure, because when it comes to correcting mistakes, there is a lot of different grammar that we could be talking about. So what do you think? I captured on video how they were fighting. If somebody told me this, I understand what they mean, that sentence, but it's still a little awkward. Now, the reason that I would say it's a little awkward is because when you think of a normal, simple sentence, the sentence is going to have a subject, a verb, and oftentimes it's going to have an object as well. Subject, verb, object. So the way the sentence, I think, to make it less awkward would be, I captured how they were fighting on video. Because how they were fighting, that is a noun phrase. That is the object of the sentence. I captured what? I captured how they were fighting on video. That is going to be my prepositional phrase, and that will go at the end of the sentence. Again, there are different ways that you can correct this. I know some of you are writing that in the chat. This is just what I would do if you want to keep the original words and the meaning. You'd say, I captured how they were fighting on video. Next. All right. I think many of you should probably be able to get this one. I am very happy with this classes because it gives me knowledge. What do you think is the mistake? I am very happy with this classes because it gives me knowledge. Again, if somebody, I understand what they want to say. If somebody said this to me in spoken English, I understand. Still, I would know. I would be able to know, reading it, there's a mistake. Even if I were listening to it, I would hear this mistake and know that something is wrong. So the mistake, yes, is this classes, all right? When you're talking about this and these, all right, you could use it in one of two ways. You could say, I am very happy with this class because it gives me knowledge. Remember, we use this with singular nouns, or I'm very happy with these classes because, well, in this case, then you would need to say because they give me knowledge. So to use the sentence, I'd say this class would be the best way to complete this sentence. But you could say these, we can use that with plural nouns. I am very happy with these classes because they give me knowledge. We would need to use they in the next part of the sentence so that it corresponds with classes, all right? Then we have, all right, this message right here. I had, hi, teacher, you're great. Hi, Wes, you're a great teacher. I have a question. He's elder to me. He's elder than me. What would you say? How would you correct this sentence? Or why do you think, it's a bit strange? Again, this is incorrect. It's a word. There is a word that is incorrect. So what do you think? I'm sure if you're reading this, like I read it, I know what the person wants to say. I know what they're trying to say. But can you identify the mistake? What do you think? So, yes, I think many of you think that older should be the word. Now, the difference between older and elder, older is an adjective, elder is a noun. So, we're going to have some options. You could say, he's my elder. In that case, elder, we're using it as a noun, which is you're telling somebody, well, this person is older than me, which is the other way of saying it. He's older than me. So if we want to use the word elder, you'd say, he is my elder, he's my elder, she's my elder, or he's older than me, she's older than me. That is the correct way to use it. The last one, all right? My father spends a lot of time in the church. Is that correct? Hope you can answer me soon. Well, it may be correct. It depends. However, I think there is a better way of saying this sentence that is a little more natural, and this would be just a matter of fluency. Because technically speaking, you could say that sentence. It is grammatically correct, but I think the message, what they really wanted to say, I think there's something we could change to make it better, and that is the preposition in. So when you use in to describe a place, then it becomes a little more specific that this person is inside this building. So if this person says, my father spends a lot of time in the church, I think of, okay, they are inside the church. Now, what I think that they wanted to say, that they could make it a little more, just for their overall fluency, to make it a little more natural, a little more fluent, my father spends a lot of time at the church. Now, when we're talking about at, we're talking about a general location. It could be inside, it could be outside. It's just saying that this is where this person spends time, which is what I think they really wanted to say. I think my father spends a lot of time at the church, and I would say the church if it is specific, in which I know what church you're talking about. If I don't know what church it is, then I think it would be better to say, if you're just saying a general statement, you're trying to give some information about your father, you just say, my father spends a lot of time at church. So at church would just be something that he does. That is something he enjoys doing. If I say at the church, then it makes me think that the other person knows the church that I'm talking about. So again, when you use the, then it becomes a little more specific. So again, that is another grammar nuance about whether you should use the or no article, all right? So I hope that this is something, I know that I think in 2020, I think I mentioned in a previous lesson, to try to identify one of your mistakes. That is a good goal for 2020. And if you're wondering, okay, well, how can I do this? Writing is a great way to attempt to identify a mistake that you're making. Write something down, reread it, and if you think that something is not correct or you're not confident about something, then that's when you're able to look it up and see if you can find the right answer and then correct that mistake. Or you'll probably, if you reread something that you wrote, you're probably just going to find a mistake. I know I find mistakes in my writing all the time. And that's what I'd like all of you to do right now, is that in the comments, I want you to write to me and tell me a mistake that you have been able to identify in the past, that you were able to learn that, okay, this is something that I was doing wrong, and this is what I learned is the correct way to write something or is the correct way to say something. Please share that with me in the comments. I think it will also be very useful for other people to read when other people are able to learn about mistakes that others have made. Perhaps they're making the same mistake. So this is very useful information, and I hope you share that with me. Write that in the comments. What is a mistake that you were able to identify in your past, and how did you correct it? So thank you guys so much for joining me. I know I didn't give many shout outs today, so I'm going to give them right now. Thank you, Gulsa, Serafina, Sophie, Saeed, Sleepwalker, Mahmoud, Michelle, English Vibes, Lolly, Angela, Mary, Wickham. Thank you guys for joining me today. Mohammed, I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this lesson, please like and share it. Write to me in the comments. Let me know of a mistake that you were able to correct in the past, which has helped you become a little more fluent in English. You can always join our social media classes. We are active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and right here at YouTube. So just a few more shout outs. Thank you. Leila, Putri, Daniel, Eloisa, Ulissa, Alexander, Farhat, Goldie, Edvaldo, Youssef, thank you. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Mary Britt, I think I got most of you, I hope. Kareem, just throwing them out there now. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, and I will see you guys next week with another live lesson. So